And we're about halfway through the first chapter of The Whispering Mountain. We've discovered that Owen's grandfather found the harp of Teirtu. And sorry, I'm probably going to say that a bunch of different ways before I settle on how to say it properly. And they think it belongs to the horrible Lord Malin, who we believe his coach was the one that went through with the guy running ahead of it, because he requires somebody to run ahead of his coach like that. And we'll pick up where we left off. Looking out while they talked, the horse Galahad had been slowly but stoutly breasting the steep hill from the river Gaff. He added, "We're almost at my home now. I should so much like grandfather to meet you. Won't you please come in and take some refreshment? I'm sure he'd like you." As he said the words, he felt a faint qualm. But surely old Mr. Hughes would like Erebus and her father. Who could fail to do so? "My word!" Erebus exclaimed, looking out. "Do you live in a museum, then, boy?" "Why, yes," he said. "My grandfather is the curator. You see, ever since he retired from being a sea captain like my father." The little town now lay below them, slate roofs shining with rain in the gloom, and only a dim street lamp here and there to throw a few dismal patches of light. In front of them, a pair of gates not unlike the school ones led to a cobbled yard. A notice on the gate bore the words, "Here am Gwydfa." "Oh, do is that?" breathed Erebus enviously. "To live in a museum! There's lucky. Whenever we stop in a town, if Tom is busy with the hair-cutting, I always look for the museum. Full of wonders they are, and your granda is the Sidward. He must be a wise man, Owen, and greatly respected in the town." "Well," Owen said, "yes," and a troubled frown creased his brow, "but this trouble of the harp and the sleepers' tickets—" "Sleepers' tickets? Here we are, though," he said. "I'll tell you about that later. You can stay the night here? The wagon will go in the courtyard." "Hey, Da!" Erebus jumped out and ran around to take the reins from Tom Dando, who was in his usual dream and would have driven on over the mountains westward toward the coast. She turned the horse and led him in through the gateway. "Wake up, Dada! Owen lives here in the museum, lucky boy, and he's invited us to meet his grandfather. Where shall I tie Galahad, Owen? To this stone pineapple on the gate-post?" She kicked a loose rock under the rear wheel of the wagon so that it should not run away backward downhill into the river Gaff. The museum was housed in a brick hall that had once belonged to the detached Baptists, until they had merged with the separated Rogationists, who owned a larger chapel built of granite with an organ. The courtyard in front of the hall was a pool of dark, split by feeble rays from a small lamp over the door. Here, another notice, fresh painted, announced that the museum was open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, except for the Sabbath, St. David's Day, St. Enodog's Day, Christmas, Easter, and various other public holidays. It was signed O. Hughes, custodian. The light above was just bright enough also to reveal some words chalked on the wall under the sign. They said, "Give us back our Sabbath opening. Down with sleepers' tickets." Looking desperately worried, Owen began wiping this message off the wall with his handkerchief, while Erebus exhorted her father. "Come on now, Tom! Don't you want to meet Owen's granda?" "Oh, well, now, I don't know," Mr. Dando said doubtfully, struggling out of his dream. "Meet his grandfather? What for? Do we really want to do that, eh? More to the purpose, does he want to meet us?" "Of course!" Erebus gave him an impatient shake and pulled him down, straightening his cloak and putting him to rights. Dislodged from his box, he was revealed as an unusually tall, thin man, with wild dark locks beginning to turn gray and deep-set eyes in a long, vague, preoccupied face. Owen, by this time, had opened the heavy outer doors of the museum and stepped into a large porch. Here he found another damp sheet of paper lying on the floor, which, when he held it toward the light, proved to bear its message. "Leave this town, Owen Hughes. We don't want you." Without a word, he folded it small and thrust it into his jacket pocket. Erebus and her father, who came up at this moment, had noticed nothing. Owen pulled on a bell rope which hung by the locked inner door, and they all waited, shivering in the damp darkness. Owen's qualm was growing inside him, faster than a thundercloud. How would his grandfather receive the visitors? He was to discover soon enough. The inner door flew open, as if it had been jerked by a wire. His grandfather stood just outside, peering angrily into the gloom. "Is that you, boy?" he said sharply. "You are over an hour late from school. What kept you, pray? You know that I particularly required you to be on time today. I will have not such unpunctuality. I have told you before." I am sorry," Owen stammered, "but you see—" "Call me sir or grandfather." "Well, what explanation have you to offer? I suppose you have been idling and playing and wasting time with your classmates." Captain Owen Hughes, or Mr. Hughes as he preferred to be called, saying there was no sense in using bygone titles, was a smallish, spare, dried-up old gentleman with pepper and salt gray hair, worn in a short peruke and tied off with a black velvet bow. He had on a jacket and pantaloons of gray alpaca, exceedingly neat but shabby. His linen, however, was white as frost, and the buckles on his old-fashioned shoes and his eyes behind his rimless pince-nez were needle-bright. "Sir, I met the kind friends who carried me all the way to Gloucester last summer. I have brought them to see you," Owen began again. "Friends!" exclaimed his grandfather harshly. "I thought you said they were a travelling tinker, a bone-setter, and his gypsy daughter. How can such a lower-dick sort of folk be friends?" "Grandfather, please," Owen said. Owen was in agony. "You must not speak of them so. Here they are, Mr. Dando and Erebus." "Tosh, boy, I've no time for them now, or ever. I have an important appointment at the inn and must delay no longer. But I can tell you this, when I return you shall be punished for your tardiness, soundly punished." He shook himself impatiently into a frieze greatcoat and picked up a shovel hat and cane, muttering, "Erebus, forsooth! What kind of an unchristian name is that?" "But, sir, they are here now in the porch." "Then they will just have to take themselves off again. I've no intention of receiving them." Mr. Hughes cast an angry glance at the cloaked figures of Mr. Dando and Erebus, standing quietly in the shadows. "Bustle them along! Make haste, pray!" he snapped at them. "I must go out, and I've no wish to leave the museum while there are strangers loitering outside it. Let me see you take your cart out of the yard, if you please." "Certainly, sir," Tom Dando replied with dignity. "We have not the least wish to remain where our presence causes inconvenience." Owen, half choked with grief and indignation, could say nothing. He stood speechless, while Erebus turned the horse and led him out of the gate. Her father climbed back to his perch on the box. Then, realizing that unless he moved they would depart without another word, Owen flew after them and caught Erebus by the hand. "Erebus, I am sorry! Oh, I am sorry!" Her grave face broke into a smile with a three-cornered dimple. "Proper old tardier, Grandad, isn't he?" she whispered. "Poor Owen. They're sorry I am we came to bring trouble on you." "Never mind, boy. We'll take ourselves off quick. I wish I were going with you. I hate him." "That's silly, when he's given you a home and a fine education, too. You make the most of it, boy." "But when shall I see you and Mr. Dando again?" he said forlornly. "Does he ever let you out for a bit of pleasuring? We'll be stopping over by Devil's Leap for a week, while the fair lasts. It's only half a day's ride. Would he let you go? Not while I'm in such disgrace, I'm sure." "Well a day," she said, laughing. "Owen!" called his grandfather. "Come here directly." "Never mind," Erebus whispered. "We're sure to meet again." She gave his hand a hurried squeeze and jumped nimbly back into the wagon as it rolled away. Dumb with suppressed feeling, Owen moved back toward his grandfather. "Now, sir, what have you to say for yourself?" barked Mr. Hughes. "Rogues and gypsies off the road, indeed. Never let such a thing occur again, I beg. And now, just now, too, when we are housing such a treasure in the museum."